So one of the questions that's come up recently is it okay to compare one person's set of input lag results versus another? I've always maintained that it's better to compare within a person's set of results. So it's better to compare my Xbox One versus my PlayStation 4 results so that if there's differences due to testing methodologies or counting methods and so forth, those aren't kind of incorporated into differences between games and systems. So recently, Battle Nonsense has come out with a video on Tekken 7 on PC. It's incredibly detailed. It looks at online, offline, VSync, different graphics modes, and also the effect of ping in terms of input lag. So it's really answered a lot of the questions that we had about input lag. The thing that someone has mentioned that I noticed myself as well, their results come out about 5 milliseconds or so slower than mine. And so the question then is that meaningful? Does that mean that one set of results is wrong or right or better or worse or whatever? I've had a think about it, and I think that there's probably a reasonable explanation as to how this occurs. So as I've explained before, so I've just pulled this up. This is PlayStation 4 version 1.03 patch, but it'll do to explain, I think, potential differences in counting methodology. So the way that I'd count this, the screen bar's right at the top. So I basically say this is 1 frame, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And then on the 8th frame, you see the head change, and that's the first frame of his animation. I think when you use the camera to capture, you're kind of obliged to add on about 4 milliseconds extra. And because, when the camera captures, when the screen has updated this far, there's no evidence that anything's happened. When it's updated this far, there's no evidence it's happened. Even here, there's no evidence. So it's only kind of after 4 milliseconds that you'll get that difference in Kazuya's head posture as your visual cue that something's going on with the animation, that the game has responded. I intentionally stopped counting at the top here, and I do that because I don't think we should be kind of punishing games just because of where we choose to look at the animation change. So a better example, or another example of how that works, if we look at BlazBlue, so one of those games that does respond very fast, the animation change that we'd look for, the first time we could see that it's updated, is actually halfway down the screen. So if you don't stop counting at the top or don't make allowance for where in the screen the animation effect occurs, you're potentially adding on 8 milliseconds or 7 milliseconds here onto the beginning of the frame. And so, realistically, the game has already rendered and has already set up what it's going to display. It's just that it takes another 8 milliseconds to get down to this level. To put it even further, if you look at the command history changing, that's going to happen all the way down here, which is another 14, almost 15 milliseconds into the frame. So, like I said, I don't think we should be punishing or disadvantaging games just based on how far down the screen the animation change occurs. I have a feeling, I have a suspicion, although 100 frame per second, 1000 frame per second camera probably eliminates this. Also in terms of where the LED, so that using that LED method, in terms of where it's positioned on the screen. So I've got a backup method for my testing with an LED and a camera, 120 frames per second, so a fairly standard method, and I've intentionally put that LED right down at the bottom, so at least that's consistent. But like I said, I think that kind of the amount of time that it takes to get down to here is probably one of the main factors that causes variation between different sets of input lag testing. If you look at the other factors, so display lag and myself are both using Brook Ultimate Fighting boards, so there should be no difference there. Digital Foundry is currently using a DualShock 4, but they may change to an Ultimate Fight board in the future. I know that Battle Nonsense uses an Xbox One controller, and so I haven't actually tested that one for input lag, so we're not sure of how much that could potentially contribute. And Peyo84 is a person on Twitter who's done some testing, and they use a Hori stick, which probably has somewhere between 2 to 4 milliseconds of input lag compared to the Brook Ultimate Fighting board. If you look at the monitors, it seems, so Digital Foundry and myself, monitor doesn't make a difference. For the other ones, they all look to be using fairly low input lag. monitors, so that shouldn't contribute too much. And as we said, I use 120 frame per second camera as a backup. Display Lag uses 120 frame per second camera for their tests, and then Puyo 84 and Battle Nonsense both use 1,000 frame per second camera. So I think that's probably, the majority of how the differences occur. Like I said, I think the main difference is just because of counting, where I stop at the top, whereas the other, potentially with the other methods, it takes that extra time just to get down the screen until that change occurs, and that probably accounts for a lot of what the differences are. Anyway, leave a comment or ask another question, and I'll see what I can do to bring a bit more information to bear.